Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And so, once again, you're here with myself in the beginning and Lucy, of course, and Disetu will be joining us shortly. Today's format will be a lot like it typically is. I'll go ahead and make the transition. And then Lucy's going to start us off. There's been a question that we've gotten from an individual, and Lucy will expand on that idea. And it's a concept that will be probably the bulk of what we'll be exploring today. So I'm going to go ahead and let the say two show up, and then we'll get right to it. So give me just a second. So once again, we would offer our greetings to all of you, and also our appreciation again for our ability to interact with you in this moment. Because in our interaction, it adds to our exploration, our fulfillment of our existence, maybe we could say. And so, again, we would greet you and hope that you're doing well today. And by that, of course, we're meaning Lucy. And it's our understanding that there's a question that has come to you. And in conversation that you and Chuck have had, you've decided to address the ideas that are contained in that question. And so we'd be very happy to share the information that we would have to share in that regard. So why don't you go ahead and begin us in that direction?
Thank you. This individual writes, I would like us to focus on this feeling that I have of something missing deep inside. The truth is, I really still struggle to believe and accept that I am enough in every way. So she writes on further, but I think that would be a good place to begin. This
Sure.
this
So,
emotion.
absolutely. So, again, what we'd like to do here is a couple of things. We would like to tie in the concept of perception and the way that historically, within the concept of the idea of time, you have, for so in those terms, very long, constructed the reality around you. So, in a very basic way, there are those of you that will approach your existence through, in the moment, what we'll basically term more logical, rational, intellectual ways, more of a thought focused way, perhaps we could say. There are those who will approach it in more of a feeling way, in an emotionally based way. And in fact, if you look around at your world, you may think that most individuals perceive their reality through the intellectual, logical, rational way. You would be mistaken in that, however. Most individuals that are on your planet experience their existence initially in a emotional way. Initially in an emotional way. So we'll just mention this to start with. And then, of course, within the idea of the terms of time, you have And this was the idea, of course, of your experience here. You may be aware, or you may not be aware, that there are many, 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 many physical dimensions, and they are all quite different. When you choose a physical dimension, you are aware, and by this we're talking about the more encompassing you, the essence, the self, the entity, whatever you would like to say, the oversoul, those types of things. The you that understands itself as infinite and unlimited. As you choose to insert yourself in physical realities, you are aware of, shall we say, the blueprints, the ideas, the themes that are going to be played out within that reality. And you choose to insert yourself into that to have that particular type of an experience. And so the themes that all of you have seen played out around you, you were aware were going to be in place when you decided to explore them. And in physical realities, especially in your physical reality, what that means is that you, due to the nature of the reality, are very used to needing to focus outside of yourself continually. You look around you at your reality. Your reality is out there. That is the way that you have considered your reality for most of your reality. Now, we'll just briefly mention that because of the shifting that all of you are doing with your consciousness and the changes that you're going to bring about in your reality, you do look at it a little bit different now than what you once did. But if we were having this conversation with you in the 1970s, our words would make even more sense. Your reality for, in terms of time, a very long period of time, has been a reality that you looked out into. You focused on what was going on around you all the time. You responded to what was happening around you all the time. You took your cues from what was happening around you all the time. You looked to others to guide you. You looked to events to guide you. You made your decisions, your choices. All the things that you did in association with an experience that you considered to be out there, an experience that was happening around you, an experience that was happening to you, right? You were in no way, shape, and form creating your experience. Yes, of course, you could, you could build a machine, you could cook a dinner, you could maybe create a garment, you could write a book. There were things that you could do within the experience, but still, it was the experience that was running the show. And this is a very common way that all of you got, we'll use the term used to, as your centuries have moved on. You looked out at your environment. You had no idea the effect that you had on your environment, nor were you meant to have an idea of the effect of you and your environment in that regard, because that was your experience. That was the experience that you chose, was to have an experience where, by and large, you had no idea that was you that was configuring energy to then turn out as your experience. Now that game is changing for all of you. And some of you have been involved in that change for, in terms again of time, a number of decades. You've explored it rather deeply. At the same time, as you associate yourself with your experience here, there is a collective experience that you're also associating yourself with, meaning, in simple terms, everybody else on your planet. If you take a moment to look around at your planet, even though the numbers of individuals who are into exploring themselves and who have explored themselves for a while has grown, there are more of you in those ranks, shall we say. Still, the larger number of individuals still are individuals who look at their world in that outward looking way, where it is the world that dictates to you how things will go. So, in that, because in your connectedness with consciousness, and especially in your connectedness with the collective consciousness, all the rest of those individuals that populate your planet, you are tied into that information still. And we're also going to suggest that as you move into a deeper understanding of yourselves, you are going to find that there are beliefs that you hold within you that are so woven into how you've lived your life, so in the background of how you live your life, that you may not, even as explorers, yet recognize that they are beliefs. They have become very integral to your exploration of this physical reality. We'll mention a few things here, and they're going to seem a little bit, maybe we might say, outside of the point or outrageous or something like that, but they are beliefs. You believe that you need to breathe to survive. You do not, but it is a belief. It's part of your reality. You believe that there is this thing that calls gravity that holds you to the surface of your planet. There is not, but it's a belief that you have in your reality. Beliefs are explanations about things that are going on that, within the context of your experience, need to make sense. And so there are many, 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 of course. And some of these, of course, are quite foundational to your experience. Now, there are some that aren't quite as foundational, perhaps we'll use that word again, but they may be foundational to your even your personal experience that individuals have yet to recognize. So, in this, as an individual, like the questioner, begins to understand the more of who and what they are. Within that exploration, there is going to be, and we'll use the term that many of you are familiar with, a letting go process. Letting go of many things, letting go of the way that you look at many things. Sometimes some of those things are still there in the background a little bit. Now, please keep in mind, as we mention all the things that we mention, that we would like you to view our words outside of the concept of something is good, something is bad, something is better, something is worse. Those types of things, because none of that will apply. It's only that you may still be expressing yourself through particular experiences. Now, in this exploration, many times individuals can easily recognize that what we'll say now you would term negative ideas, negative beliefs, are those things that attach you to your situation, attach you to, we'll just use the simple term, your ego, in a way that maybe hinders your deeper awareness of self a little bit. Most individuals do not consider that positive, what you would call positive emotions, can do the same thing. And they do it because of the comparison that individuals make. It is a very common thing to, when you say something is good, that's the type of feeling I would like to have. It is a very common thing for the opposite, shall we say, to pop up in somebody's mind. That I want to feel like this, because I don't want to feel like that. And so, what that tells you about where you are in all of that is that you are still working with the way that you've utilized energy from within the experience. And again, that's not bad or wrong. However, the direction that you're moving, you no longer do that. You understand that experience is always valid, regardless of what label you may place on it here. Excuse us. So, within your reality, one of the things, one of the beliefs that you have is that it is good to be helpful to individuals. It is good to help individuals who are caught in the midst of challenges and things of this nature. It is the rare individual on your planet that is able to see all of the interconnections that an individual has, not only with all the other versions of themselves, but with all other individuals. It is the rare individual on your planet that sees deeply enough into those movements to understand how a challenging experience in an individual's life may be exactly what they need to experience for reasons that many times are difficult to understand. It may be that an individual in the course of this exploration, not that they were doing it intentionally, in other words, they're not choosing this approach, but they may be believing that this widened them that they are heading towards is the preferred version of them. It is the better them. The them that is the physical them, the them that was leading their regular life without this knowledge, was somehow less than. It's not as embraceable as the other them might be. These are sometimes subtle hooks that will color your experience of your journey sometimes. So, on occasion, what can be necessary is to view yourself, and by this we're talking of all individuals, especially those individuals who've been doing this type of an exploration, and to see if some of these more subtle things are at play, where you're looking towards, and this comes into the idea of embracing what all of you understand in concept, embracing your moment, embracing the now that you are in. Because frequently what's going on when individuals have these types of ideas is two things. One is there's a comparison that's being made into the experience that's being had versus the experience that they would like to have, that they believe will be had when, not in the past, but in the future, which again is not in their present. And so others have mentioned this to you, and we will reiterate what they have said as well, and we'll say it also. As you become increasingly familiar with who and what you are, you're going to be asked to become even more familiar with who and what you are, asked by the process, asked by yourself, perhaps we'll say. So within the exploration, you can look around at how the exploration so far has been explored by individuals. And you can see the steps that have been taken by individuals, the movement that they have made. Not many of you, however, are familiar with then what? What does the exploration look like then? What are the type of movements that you need to make then? What are the nuances that you need to discover about yourself then? This is the place that many individuals who have explored and have these types of questionings have found themselves within. There is a, perhaps we'll just say, an additional layer of themselves that there is yet to be discovered. And so we can hear individuals watching this going, so what is that method? How do we do that? What approach do I have? And perhaps in a somewhat Zen like way, we may say the approach is to be you in the experience that you're having. It can be a difficult thing sometimes to understand that all you need to understand about your movement is contained in the experience you're having in that moment. If when an individual has that type of questioning, if they can really be, and we were going to say okay, but we'd like to change that. If you can even embrace where you are very strongly and appreciate what's going on in your moment and not look for it to change, but just attempt to understand it as deeply as you can. Understand you as deeply as you can. And in that, of course, you can reach out into the rest of who and what you are with an experience of open allowance and just allow whatever will come into your awareness at that moment to come into your awareness at that moment. And it may not be the answer that you seek immediately. You may be incited to explore a little something over here. And then you may be incited to explore a little something over here. And someplace along that line, that aha comes into your mind that gives you the answer that you're looking for. Now, there can be easily identifiable things that you may see right when you look at yourself. Moving totally beyond what other individuals think of you is a more challenging thing than many people believe it is. It can be a many layered approach to totally have divested yourself of having any concern whatsoever of what somebody else thinks of you or feels about you. And now this is different than connectivity with individuals. This is you believing that anything should be done in a particular way for particular reasons. Some of these things can be at play with individuals sometimes. So there are some things that individuals can look at and can stick out a little bit for those individuals. Other times, it is much more effective, and it's always effective to do this, of course, but just to embrace the moment that you're in fully, not point your consciousness in the direction of where you should be heading, where you would like to be heading, and allow that experience to provide you with movement because it will.
Got it. That's beautiful. So, say I'm feeling not enough. If I embrace that and I sit with I'm not enough, that immediately gets the mind exploring what does that mean? Enough for whom and enough of what?
Yes.
Um, and also could almost immediately bring the mind to, well, of course, this prompts me, this feeling of not enoughness prompts me to be ever exploring. And that also it causes me to be expanding. And expansion has been a good thing in my life. So that is that one example of what you're
Yes.
saying.
So as just some common ways of seeing things on your planet, along this idea of not enough. Again, it is almost a default thing to, and I'm not saying that everybody does this, but It's almost a default thing to look at somebody's experience and see how they could change their experience. And so if you're saying that they could change their experience, someplace in there is a judgmentalism. It means that there's something wrong with the experience. We'll suggest in this moment that there is nothing wrong with any experience that anybody is having. If you are in a larger city, and we use that example just because it can be more common, and you view an individual who is homeless, who's living on the street, and who is digging through a garbage can looking through something to eat. Pay attention to the thoughts that run through your mind and the feelings that come up for you in that moment. Because that individual in that moment is expressing their experience of reality perfectly. For many individuals, that's a difficult concept to understand because of all the beliefs that they associate with that particular way of expression. And there are many, many other types of examples on your planet that you could insert into that. So the idea of being in a particular place, having ideas about what that experience perhaps should mean, what it should have meant, utilizing concepts of time, all these things can be tricky, nuanced things for individuals. It's in the release of all of that that an individual will find themselves closer, shall we say, to being free of the feeling that the question expresses. Because in the arrival, we'll phrase it this way, in the arrival of the state that all of you are headed towards, you will fully embrace your experiences. You will even, we will suggest, and this is surprising to some individuals, you will still create challenging experiences for yourself. But you will understand the draw to create those challenging experiences. And you will embrace the experience with enthusiasm, understanding why it is you're choosing to create the experience the way that you are. Think of sometimes having just experienced some type of a smell that you really are not pleasant with, you don't enjoy. It's a bad smell. Perhaps it's you've opened the door to a room, or you've opened a door to a refrigerator, or perhaps you picked up a pair of socks that you wore for a week straight, whatever it might happen to be. Sometimes, even though it was a bad experience, you will smell those socks again, or you will open the door to get one more whiff of what that smells like again. There are situations within your experience that, in the background, we'll say, due to what we'll just maybe in the moment call the fascination of having the experience, you will allow yourself to have a number of times, even though initially the experience was not what you would call a pleasant experience. And this is the you of you that's acting in the background, the part of you that embraces experience, really regardless of what the experience is, because that's what you're all doing here. Now, within your experience of being the human being, you've developed beliefs, you've developed judgments about those experiences. Some are better to have than others, but this is not your foundational approach to your existence. Your foundational approach to your existence is that all of your experiences are what you're looking for, not just these or just those. So there are many things about this experience of yours that are flavors that you will become much more familiar with as you move deeper into your transitional period, that you've seen in very different ways. before you began to do that.
May I interject?
Indeed.
So, what is it that I would have wanted in the creation of, for example, this feeling that I just can't hear my soul and feel it within me? Why would I or anyone have wanted to create that experience?
In the most foundational way, in association with your experience, that particular experience is the one that begins to open the doors to your exploration. Because again, there's a circle, shall we say, in this experience, or a cycle, shall we say, in this experience. In other words, it began in a particular way, it moved into a particular type of an experience, and it's headed into a ending, perhaps we'll call it, though it's not going to be an ending, but it's moving back towards what the beginning was like. In other words, in the beginning, you had a much different understanding of your experience. Then you moved into a much more sequestered way of seeing yourself. In other words, as just the human being, not the soul expressing itself as the human being. And now you're going to move back into that larger understanding of yourself. But to head in that direction, that phenomenon of questioning is what moves you. It's what incites you. It's what inspires you to then open doors within yourselves, within your consciousness, to have information begin to flow that then incites you to ask different questions, which then continues your process. So, foundationally, that's the reason why that occurs.
Thank you.
So, there was more to this question.
There was. Well, there was the not enoughness. So if you're
Correct.
wanting,
So we will go back again, and this is difficult for all of you. We will go back again to what we just briefly mentioned. It would be a challenging thing for most individuals on your planet to see the homeless individual digging through the garbage can looking for food and saying that that individual's existence is enough. It would be a challenge, would it not? Yes.
yes,
Because you have ideas about what existence should be about. Now, we're not saying that you can't change your existence. Certainly you can. And change occurs all the time within consciousness. But, and one of the other things that you do too, and this ties into what we talked about a little earlier, is that that idea of not enough is also very closely tied to looking around you at how everybody does things in the world. Because your world for so long, in terms of time, has been a world where you focused outwardly, all of your energy, perhaps we'll say, your focus has been on doing things in the world and comparison, comparing yourself to other individuals, right? It hasn't necessarily been about understanding your own choices, regardless of what they were, and that your choices were enough, regardless of what they were. It was always a comparison about other individuals. What were they doing? How were they doing it? How should it be done? Right? When you go to universities, many times, it's because there is an individual there that teach you how it should be done, the information that you should have as you approach this subject matter. So this is a very common theme yet within your reality. It's a theme that's changing and shifting, but it's quite common. And again, we're not saying here that it was a wrong theme or it is a wrong theme or there was anything bad about it. It was a valid part of your experience. It was a part of your exploration of this physical dimension. You're just changing that exploration now. So, what you're doing is you're moving away from focusing so strongly in the outward way of seeing things and in that comparisons. And that's where the idea of enough comes from, right? Because you compare yourself against other individuals. My experience should be this. Even this physical exploration that individuals have, they will look at how other individuals' experiences are going. And if their experience is not the same, they will go, there's something missing with my experience because it's not that. It's a very common thing for individuals within your physical dimension to do that. You will leave that behind, but it will be a process. Like anything is a process. And so, of course, from the perspective of the self, of course, there is no way that you cannot be enough. So, if we think in terms, and we're going to start this like this, you can choose anything, it doesn't matter what it is, but we will choose, let's say, the human body. So, that body of yours is made out of various organs, maybe we'll say. You have these things you call bone, these muscles, you have skin, you have lungs, you have a heart, you have kidneys, you have all these various things, a brain, all these things. These things are made up of cells, right? All this is common to most individuals. Those cells are made up of what you call molecules. Those molecules are made up of what you call, now we're saying what you call, what you've identified as atoms. Those atoms are made up of what you've identified as particles. Right? Your particles, now, there are certain aspects of your exploration within your particular physical dimension, are composed of energy that take the appearance of particles at particular times. Right? Energy is something that's constantly in movement. Now, most individuals will consider to be energy just something that occurs. It's just this movement of something. It, in fact, is consciousness. It is aware. It is consciousness as it moves and shifts and changes and develops itself, experiences itself. So, in that, everything is consciousness. It matters not what it is. So, as we began with a human body just now, all individuals are consciousness. If we use the term God, and if we say that in those terms, God created everything, if we would ask somebody, what was it that came before God? More than likely, we would get the answer, nothing came before God, right? God is where it all began, using that terminology. So then God created everything. Most individuals who are more aligned with those ideas, when they think in terms of the personality, perhaps we'll say, that that term represents, they have all these incredible terms that they will apply to that personality, correct? All these fantastic ways of it being, right? No, sometimes there are more limited ways depending on how you see that individual, shall we say, expressing itself. But that's interpretation by and large. Now, if we talk to individuals who are associated with that and we say, okay, so what was it that God created? Everything. God created everything. So if God created everything, what did God create everything out of? There was only one thing in existence in the beginning, which was God. So God had to create everything out of God, right? So all this fantastic, unlimited awareness, all these traits that this unending loving ability, this infiniteness, this knowing of everything, all of these things that was applicable to this personality must also apply to everything that was created from, shall we say, in this regard, that personality, because it had only itself to create with. So, in this regard, even though you may be living a life that historically within time to this date has seemed largely separate from that feeling of yourself, intellectually, you can understand that that's not the truth of things, that you have to be all of that. Regardless now, in larger, maybe we'll say metaphysical terms, what words you use to describe that. You have to be all of that. There can be no other way that you would have your existence. Whether you say it's the universe, whether you say it's all that is, the creating universal one and all, whatever you want to say, you have to be that. So all of those, now we'll say divine qualities that you may apply to whatever that idea is, has to be applied to yourself because you have to be that. You can flow from no other place. You can only flow from there because it's only from that that existence flows from. So that means that all of those fantastic qualities need to lie within each individual. It can be no other way. Now, have you had an experience here on this planet that has, by and large, again, in terms of time, hidden that information from you? Of course, you have. You're all very aware of this. So, in that, filling yourself back up again with that awareness is the process that you're all within. And so, again, we'll tie together these two ideas. There is no question that that awareness is within you. It has to be within you. There's no way it cannot be within you. Now, if you can stay in your moment, if you can focus yourself in the now, that's the place that you will find that process happening the most effectively for you to be able to have that experience show up for you.
Got it. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Any final thoughts before we end?
You're all embarking on a journey that is still largely unfamiliar to you. You are still familiar with a world where things happened around you, where to look at how others were doing things was the common way of doing things. Now, even within the course of your history, of the way that things, we'll say, were more commonly, and again, we'll reference your 60s and 70s, perhaps, maybe your 50s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, largely anyway. Those ideas, the way of looking at the world, even though it has shifted, a lot of that is still there in the world. And again, the world is made up of many individuals. Now, any of the challenges that you have become familiar with any individual having as they begin to move through this process, keep in mind that you will see on your planet. Because your planet is a collection of individuals. And so you will see movements occur on your planet that will very much reflect movements that you've seen within individuals. These movements, many times, can be expressed by you, knowing behind the scenes, shall we say, that they will incite change within you, that they will bring information and questioning and the opportunity to allow different type of information into your experience, because many times within your experience you can become, maybe we'll say, a little complacent. Now, we're not talking about individuals sometimes, but individuals who are in this exploration, but your population as a whole. So sometimes it takes things to move you out of where it feels comfortable for you to be, maybe we will say. Because you are still, by and large, much more comfortable, again, we'll use that word, with what you know than what you do not know. Most of the times, if there's something that you do not know, you are a little bit reticent to go there because you don't know what it holds for you. You don't know what your ability will be. You don't know what it's going to ask of you. There are many things that you are unfamiliar there in what you don't know. And so it can be sometimes a little bit challenging step to move into places that are unfamiliar to you. But that's just what you're all doing, is you're moving into something that is unfamiliar to you. And so you would drag your feet, shall we say, as you're doing that. And so there are a variety of ways that you do that. And there's also a variety of ways that you utilize around your planet to shake you free of doing that. Sometimes those things are a little more, shall we say, in your face than others are. But if they are, know that behind the scenes, again, shall we say, all of you collectively understand that you need that to get you to move. You need that to get you to question. You need that to move into a place that you don't know what's coming, that you're leery to move into that direction. You may be a little fearful to move into that direction, right? So have patience with yourself. Attempt not to project yourself too far out into what your future may be and what you need to do for your future. Attempt, if you can, to embrace your choices for the reasons why you want to make your choices. That's going to be the most important thing. You'll find sometimes a great deal of challenge in just doing that. But if you can do that, and if you can do that effectively, that will be very helpful for you. Also, know that in terms of time and a future, all of you have a you that's already made this change, that understands what it is to experience themselves in that place. You have a connection with that you right now. It's an immediate connection. And so, open to that information, open to the feeling that's within that particular version of you, the feeling of what it's like to be in that now different experience. Not so much in a I want to get there type of a way, I want to be there type of a way, but just in a way to soothe yourself and any kind of hesitation you may have into exploring what it is that's new for you, what it is that is uncommon for you. Those things can help to make things, again, we'll use this word perhaps, a little more comfortable for you as you do those things that are maybe uncomfortable for you to do. And so we'll leave you with that.
Thank you.